everyone. Welcome. My name is Reed Summers, and I'm here tonight with Marshall Vian Summers, my father, and we're here to share with you an important message and a conversation as well about the greater evolutionary direction our world is heading in and how this is connected to our deeper spiritual nature and calling in life. So thank you so much for being here. I think we're going to have a great conversation and be able to share with you some insight into the overall direction humanity is going in and how this is connected to what we need to be doing in our lives and the greater direction for us as well. Humanity is facing enormous challenges right now at this moment, including a massive earthquake that's killed potentially up to 60,000 people in the last 2 weeks, an ongoing land war in Europe, which has killed over 250,000 people in under a year, and so many other forces and events in our environment, our societies, our political spheres. So we're all dealing with a lot right now, and it might feel like there are waves upon waves hitting you one after another, making it very difficult to gain a sense of footing in your life, and also a sense of orientation or knowing how to be connected and involved in the world around you. And so it's very important that we begin to take into our perspective not just what's happening in the world, all the world events and so forth, but the bigger context in which those events are taking place. And Marshall is going to be sharing with you a big picture on that context that could be very helpful in understanding yourself and your life and where you need to go in the future. For those who are not yet aware of Marshall and his work, Marshall has been teaching for over 40 years a comprehensive spirituality and preparation for our world's emergence into a larger universe of intelligent life. His works span over 40 books now, many of which are being published in over 35 languages around the world. And I've had the privilege to work with Marshall in the recent years of my life and share with him this work of bringing to people a bigger perspective on humanity's destiny in a larger universe and how this is deeply connected to our own spiritual reality, our calling in life, and the practical matters of our lives as well. Mm-hmm. Marshall is going to be offering a series of teachings, starting with tonight, in which he will be exploring that bigger picture reality and talking about why the world needs you, how you fit into that bigger picture, and why your contribution is so very important. So we hope you can join us, not just for tonight, but as we move into the weeks ahead. Tonight, Marshall's going to start off by giving us the really big picture, almost so big it might not even be in anyone's mind at this moment. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that. Without understanding or even being able to see that big picture, understanding ourselves becomes more difficult because part of us is innately made to serve and to function within that bigger picture. Part of us is bigger as well, and often we may find ourselves living in the lesser part of ourselves. So gaining an image or a view of that bigger picture could be very important for us to understand our overall life in the world and the direction that we may be called to take. And it may not be relevant or immediately applicable to what we're facing in the day, but it could be very energizing and very clarifying as well. So Marshall's going to start with the very big and then move down into what we're all facing and how we can begin to integrate that big picture and move with it in our lives. Mm-hmm. So join me in welcoming Marshall.
Great. Thank you, Reed. Well, it's really important that we have this chance to be together because it's so hard to see the bigger picture of our lives given the changing circumstances that are ever increasing now and the impacts of those upon us and the world around us. So I'd like to start at a very big level, as Reedy mentioned, and because ultimately that is going to determine our fate and our destiny as a race. And fate and destiny is something that certainly is beyond our current time frame, but the outcome of that is being determined within our time frame, within the years in which we're living now, and the content of those years, and what happens to us individually and all of us together. So the biggest thing really is happening is that humanity is emerging into a universe of intelligent life, what I call the greater community, a universe full of intelligent life, a universe more vast, more complex, and in some ways more challenging than anything we have ever experienced before. And this emergence is going to be and is part of our evolutionary development currently, has been leading up to this time as well. It's going to make all the difference in what we do and do not do in these transition years that we're involved with now. Going from being an isolated world with an isolated race of people into a larger arena of intelligent life, an arena of intelligent life that we know nothing about. So tonight I have the opportunity to share with you some insights into this larger arena and why it is so important in terms of coming to terms with the big question in your life is, why am I here? What am I here to do? What's most important for me? What would satisfy not just my curiosity, but the need of my own soul? Because the soul has a need as well. The soul has a very fundamental need. And my point of view states that all of us have been sent into the world at this time to be in the world under the very circumstances that we're experiencing now. That doesn't mean these are pleasant circumstances or easy circumstances, but that is the greater context for us being here. Of course, day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, we are navigating the world and dealing with all the complexities of living in a changing world and all the difficulties of living in a physical reality. For beyond that, we're really spiritual beings. And for a spiritual being to come into a physical reality is pretty challenging, so different, so completely different from the reality to which we've come from and to which we will eventually return. That's why it takes so long for us to grow up, to be able to develop the mental skills and the physical skills of navigating a changing and uncertain world. Such a great contrast, as I said, to where we have come from. So the biggest aspect of this threshold of change is our emergence into this greater community of life. As a physical life. We don't need to talk about other dimensions here. What I'm talking about is bigger than anybody can possibly grasp. And nobody in the world, perhaps nobody in the universe, can grasp all of it, for it is so great and so huge. Our task is to understand where we are in this process of evolution from a higher and larger standpoint. If you're in the middle of it day to day, well, you see the weather and you see the news and you see yourself and you go through the motions of life. But to see the bigger context is something that begins to give you a larger framework for understanding yourself and why you are the way you are. Perhaps you're extraordinary in some ways. Perhaps you're different than other people. Perhaps you have thoughts and feelings that nobody around you has, that sets you apart, sometimes painfully. Perhaps you have a desire to understand life in the universe. Many people do, you know. And it's been with you since childhood. Perhaps you drew pictures of the stars, or pictures of planets, or pictures of spacecraft when you were a little child. However that's manifested for you, if it has, then that has something to do with your future and destiny. These are very early signs, and children don't understand what it means, and we have these signs too, and we often don't understand what they mean. But as we learn and grow up and become human beings, which is a very challenging task, we also get signs of a deeper nature or thread within us. So when I talk about life in the universe, the greater community, I'm not talking about our explorations into space. I'm talking about contact with those who are coming here and have come here already. Certainly recent footage from the Navy pilots has shown us these craft, finally for the first time, since this has been going on for about 80 years, behind the scenes, very well covered up, very secretive. But millions of people around the world have seen craft like this. Some have even had direct encounters. So what I'm talking about is not something that's really that new to us. It's just something we don't talk about, or something that people are afraid to share, or something that's happening behind the scenes but reveals itself in small ways, sometimes big ways, countless times. This is part of the dimension of our life that is out of the norm, but is so important that it holds some keys to understanding where we're going. What is our destiny as a human race? This greater community of life is not something we're going to go take over. It's not something we're going to, it's not like the frontier that's waiting for us to explore and claim it for ourselves. It's something we're going to have to contend with, full of powerful technological forces and races very different from our own. So this is the evolutionary direction of our world. Eventually, all worlds where intelligent life has evolved will eventually emerge into this greater community of life through their own technological development or through intervention or visitation from races from beyond. It's unavoidable. And we're experiencing it now, increasingly, every day increasingly. So this is the evolutionary direction of our world, but it also has something to do with why you're here, perhaps. And I'm going to invite you to look into this for yourself, to see what your experience has been and how this might affect you. Do this objectively with yourself. Don't just dismiss it or say it's not real, can't be. What do you mean it can't be? It's happening. And because it represents our destiny and it's happening now, it has everything to do with where the world is going now. What is being created, what is being destroyed. Why are wars fought? What's happening to the world physically? The decline of the natural world, the loss of world resources, the heating of our planet. The condition of the world has actually brought visitation and intervention here. Why? Because worlds like ours are so rare in the universe. Beautiful terrestrial planets with a grand diversity of life. In the universe and barren worlds, my goodness. So certainly, when this begins to happen, and this happens perhaps often, when technological races begin to outstrip their world's resources, intervention happens. It's a sign. It's a sign to others in the universe to take note, for they may have an interest in this world as well. Not for us necessarily, but something that is so valuable as a resource that they would certainly intervene for their own interests. It's very important here to think that they're not here because they love us or think we're wonderful people or we have grand spiritual potentials. They're here for the environment. The environment. You know, this is really important because environment is the most important thing. Environment in our world seems to be way down the list of priorities for most people. Maybe it's not even on their list. But it really is the most important thing. Because if that environment changes, everything changes. The world is now heating with every passing day. It creates wild weather, sometimes more extremely cold, sometimes more extremely hot, but overall hotter. It's changing people's lives. It's changing the dynamics of our world. It's changing the stability of our world. It's also a sign for visitation intervention to take place. These two great events, which are going to shape the future of our world, are really connected to each other. If environment is the most important thing, and we're sitting on an environment of grand and great value, and we're destroying it, wouldn't that create visitation and intervention? If we're the wealthiest planet around, in terms of its biological diversity, mineral wealth, whatever, and we're destroying that, wouldn't that create visitation, intervention? So now our environment is changing on a degree never seen in the time of human history. Every degree that the planet warms will change the outcome for humanity, everywhere. Our ability to grow food, access to water, everything. So there's nothing really bigger than this. in terms of our future and our security and our well-being and our stability. Because if countries start fighting each other over fundamental resources, well, we're going to have a world at war, like in a big way. Not one grand war, but many wars. Wars over resources, water. What's more precious than water? See, this is why the world needs you. It doesn't need necessarily what you want to give, but it needs something in you that you have that probably has never been fully discovered. Maybe you have some clues, but you're not sure. Of course, nobody's sure at the beginning. Nobody has the big answer at the beginning, not in the things we're talking about. But there are signs of life within you, signs of greater potential. And they're coming from the world, you see. The world is telling you things. Now, your spiritual reality is telling you things too, but I want to highlight the nature of the world messaging, because that will give you a sign and a set of signs of what to respond to amongst all the problems that are now emerging, and there are many. What is it that strikes you? What is it that seems to have some special meaning for you, innately? Not that you visited that country and you met these people. I mean, just innately. It stirs something in you that's very, very deep. Like an ancient memory that you brought with you from your ancient home.
Thank you, Marshall. I appreciate how big this really is, and it's humbling. And, you know, I feel for all those watching in a way, because, as I said in the beginning, we're all dealing with waves of change in our own personal lives and in the world, especially coming out of a global pandemic in the last 2.5 years. And so now here's an even bigger one for us, right? And so how would you say the individual could gain their footing in a world like this?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the big questions, is how can I be in a world like this without falling apart or living fearfully or withdrawing or becoming mentally ill or breaking down? Because what's in you that's really the deepest part of you is really the part that's connected to where the world is going. Because from the moment we're born, we're being conditioned by the world, our environment, our family, everything. And that accumulates over the years of our life, through adolescence, childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, and onward, until all we see is the world and its problems. And all we think are the world's thoughts. And all we see are the things that we're used to seeing, and we become habituated to doing certain things, seeing certain things, believing certain things. But this core of response within us, this is the God seed now. That is what holds the key to your connection to all these big events that are now beginning to emerge. Perhaps you felt in early time that you felt that your life was going to be different, or something was really going to be different about the world that you were going to live in as you grew up. Or you had premonitions. Maybe they were fearful, maybe they were hopeful. But something was in the background within you that was cueing you up to living in a radically changing world, which we're now beginning to live in. You have to search yourself for that.
You know, Marshall, here I recall some things you've said in the past about that each of us has kind of a bigger aspect of self and a smaller aspect of self. And the bigger part of us is made for what is happening that is big.
That's right.
And if we live totally unaware of that, or avoid it, or hide from the world, or try to just preoccupy ourselves, be happy, pleasantly stimulated, and so forth, we're in a way enabling the smaller part of us to relate to a smaller environment.
Right.
And our world can begin to collapse. And so I feel like here, just the awareness that our world is taking a big evolutionary step out into a larger universe, that's huge, because it activates a part of us that's made for that.
That's right.
That's made for that scale of a problem.
Yes. Yes, that's right. And it's important to understand when we talk about this notion of life in the universe, greater community, this is not a human universe we're entering into. A universe of human values. The diversity of life out there is probably pretty phenomenal. So This is something that could be very much outside your daily focus. And it's important now for a number of reasons. First of all, you need to survive in this new world reality. If you're living a little monocular life, assuming that everything is going to be there for you and be the same for you, your employment, the stability of your community, the climate, the seasons, everything is going to be as you are used to them being, then you're not going to adapt to this changing world environment. And the failure to adapt is very dangerous and costly. You're not keeping pace with where the world is going, because most people aren't even paying attention. They don't want to know. I don't want to know about that. Well, you need to know about that. You're here to know about that in a bigger sense. This deeper intelligence I'm talking about really represents the internal part of you, whereas your worldly self is something that's been created since you've been here. A few decades old, maybe several decades. That's it. And part of you is eternal and still connected to your source. Wow. So that eternal part of you is the guiding light here. Because this is your divine connection, and this is what is connected to the movement of the world. Otherwise, people just want to tune this out. I don't want to look at this. It's too big for me. I just want to do what I have to do. But that's not adaptation. You know, it reminds me of the old Marine motto, you know, the Marines, military force. Adapt, improvise, and create. Which means you're going into situations where nothing is stable, and you have to adapt to whatever it is, which may be, you know, changing day to day. Well, that's a very radical environment. But in a sense, our world is changing very rapidly. And as the temperature rises in the world, it has its impact on all the things that we depend upon for the welfare of our life. Wow. It's incremental, but then it hits big thresholds. Right now, all of a sudden, the southwestern United States runs out of water, most of it. So there are big thresholds that are happening even now.
And if I can ask, Marshall, I think a lot of people may think of preparing for that as something in their personal affairs, their finances, how they live, the food they grow, and all of that. But you teach something regarding their inner reality, building a stronger inner core in response to a changing outer world. Yes. So can you talk about what is the actual preparation on the inside to deal with an environment like this that's changing?
That's very good. You know, Reed mentioned that there's a little self and a big self, or I say a temporary self and a permanent self, but it's the same language. It means the same thing. That the stronger you become in your core, the more you're connected to this deeper intelligence within you. We'll call it intelligence. It's meant to guide the bigger parts of your life, whereas your intellect is meant to take care of all the details of your life. It's almost you have a huge executive function that is about setting a direction in your life and meeting great challenges or making decisions at great turning points or change in the road. And then there's the little executive self, which just takes care of all the details. So your personal mind is meant to take care of all the details, but you have a bigger mind to know where to go, who to be with, what not to be with, what to choose, what not to choose. It's fundamental, because you have a destiny here. And the destiny isn't what you have right now. A destiny is someplace you're going to. And you don't just know the destiny, because you're not there yet. I mean, you could make a theory about it or create a picture of it, but it's never going to be like that in reality. A destiny is a journey. It's a journey you've got to take in life, and it's coming from inside of you. God has given you this power. God's not managing your life and affairs. God's not even guiding you. The God of a billion races and more in this galaxy and thousands of other galaxies? No. God's intelligent. Put the guiding intelligence within you. People say, is this intuition? Well, intuition comes from this deeper knowledge, but the deeper knowledge is even bigger than that. It's really carrying the real purpose and mission of your life. It's holding it for you until you're in a situation in life and in a state of mind where you can come to see what that is and to become responsible for it. See? The preparation has many stages for this. It's not just having the right ideas or believing in the right things. You can't give your life over to God because God is giving your life back to you. You're going to manage your life. Knowledge will guide you into bigger things of your life. Now, we're living in a time of momentous change, and the bigger part of you really builds strength and foundation in that knowledge because you become more fearless, more competent, you become more wise, you make better decisions, you're not fooled by other people, you're not fooled by governments, you're not fooled by the things that just, people just follow blindly. And you can see things and discern things that are really important to see and discern.
Thank you. Yeah, Marshall, mental health has been on my mind a lot, especially in the last few years, and I think we all know how challenged mental health is out there in society. And we've talked a lot about how, yes, there are many causes of challenges in mental health, and we want to acknowledge that. But then there's also the factor of the environment changing.
That's right.
And when the environment changes and you can't relate to it, that produces or can produce an experience of anxiety and depression that's very pervasive. Add to that we all have this deeper spiritual intelligence that is knowing things.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're disconnected from that, the signals are coming up, but we almost can't interpret it. It's like we're getting soul-level signals in a language we don't understand. And I think those disconnects between us and the environment and us and our own inner response is possibly producing a very difficult experience for people.
Oh, I'm sure it is. In fact, I felt the power of this adaptation myself, and you can break down in the face of it. And I really feel for younger people who do not yet have a strong enough anchor being in the world, a strong enough position in the world, to feel the things that they're feeling and see the things they're seeing. And they're seeing their world break down, change right before their eyes. Their future is changing. Perhaps their prospects are diminishing. They see their world entering into greater levels of crisis. And you can understand why this would lead to tremendous fear and anxiety and self-doubt. And here again, the power of this knowledge is the redemptive force within you. God is not going to save you by what you believe in. God is going to save you by giving you this knowledge to follow so that you can fulfill your destiny in being in the world, whether you are a Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim, or have no religion at all. I want to be very clear about that. This is not a belief situation. Actually, belief is pretty weak and can become very, very restraining or limiting to a person. I only believe in this. Well, you don't see everything else if you only believe in this. The beauty is God saves you from the inside out, not by what you believe in. No. And God saves you because what you have been given can guide your life, determining the really important things of your life. It's not going to tell you where to go this Friday. It's not going to tell you, what to choose, where you're shopping. It's going to set a direction, and it's going to support you in that direction. And you adjust your life accordingly. Otherwise, you're going to see what's coming over the horizon, and you're going to be so frightened, so anxious. You just want to go away. You go into denial. I'm not going to look at this. But you need to look at it. It's your life. It's changing. Nature can be unmerciful to the unprepared. And so when you're in a changing environment, adaptation and preparation then become important. Because otherwise, you're just going to hope things get better and things are going to go where they're going to go. And you never saw that, or you don't know what that means, and you're overtaken by it in the end. Perhaps, even in childhood, you get feelings of never do certain things. Like I got a feeling in childhood, never live near moving water. Seafront, right, like the level of the sea. Or rivers, never live at the edge of a river. Because I kept seeing these images of the Mississippi River flooding everything around it. So when I was a teenager, I said, boy, I should never live near moving water. I still think that. In this day and age, living near moving water is extremely hazardous. Never live in a desert. I got that message a little bit later on. These are early messages for me. I wasn't doing what I'm doing now to get these kind of impulses, but I can see their wisdom being played out everywhere. The Middle East is going to become uninhabitable in the future. Think about that. Where are all those people going to go? I'm not talking about end of century. I'm talking about 15, 20, 30 years from now. And it will be happen. It doesn't happen all of a sudden. It happens gradually. So the big changes are already afoot and bigger changes to come. So instead of retreating and withdrawing or thinking, I just got to protect what I have, I can't deal with this, you need to begin to look into things as objectively as you can. I know it's upsetting. I get upset. The war in Ukraine is upsetting me. Things upset me. Of course they do. You'd be numb if they didn't upset you. So allow that to happen. Some things are hard to look at, and you don't have answers, but you do have a direction. If you have a direction, you don't need so many answers. You can't live on answers. Okay? Your life is just not a process of putting answers together. It's about moving somewhere. You need to move in life. You can't be stale, you can't be stagnant, because your environment is changing. No matter where you live, your environment is changing. And some of the most beautiful places to live are the places where the greatest change is happening. You know, coastal cities will be flooded sometime in the near future. Flooded. Means you can't live in them. That's foreseeable. It's inevitable. But you have to be looking to see these things. Because it takes time to change your life, particularly if you have a family or you're established. It may take a decade for you to change your life. You can't do it in a week or a month unless you're being driven out of where you live. So
Marshall, let me ask, if all of this change is coming, I'm sure people around the world are having these moments of premonition or warning on the inside
Yes.
all the time.
Oh, certainly.
And I'm sure many people listening have had that experience of knowing something they don't want to know.
Yeah.
Something highly inconvenient, but there it is. Or a warning about a certain place or maybe a certain person. So how can people increasingly tap into that messaging system to be able to get those messages more often as they need to,
Right.
and then even to act on them?
Well, I've provided a great deal of teaching and study practices online free. I want the world to have it. They can help you do all these things I'm talking about. There's a way to do this, okay? It's not something you learn in the university. It's something that really is a higher order kind of teaching. And in part is to prepare and adapt you for living in a radically changing world. And, you know, unfortunately, so much of the world can't do this. They can't prepare. They're living day to day. You know, they have no resources to go anywhere or change anything. They're oppressed by poverty or religious or political oppression. And, you know, no matter what happens, they can't escape it. So I'm talking to people like you who probably have the opportunity and the resources to change your life. It may not happen easily or quickly, but you can do this. And you'll start to get, as soon as you move a little bit in this direction, you'll start to get feelings, and some of them you've had before. Like I had as a teenager, never lived near moving water. Well, that was actually, it's proven to be a wisdom of life, particularly given what's happening now. I mean, if you live on a seashore, you probably don't have a future living there. It's obvious. I mean, look at the world and don't be afraid to look at these things. It's your future. And not look at it like I'm in a panic, I'm going to go leave the city and go live in the country. That would be a big mistake. But okay, what steps do I need to take and how can I learn more? The world is giving you signs. There are a lot of people doing a lot of study, a lot of science in the areas that I talk about. This is not just in the ethers, okay? This is actually happening on the ground everywhere. But most people are not responding. And to be not responding means you're irresponsible. Irresponsible doesn't mean you're not just taking care of your affairs. It means you're not responding to things that are really important, that are speaking to you. Okay? Speaking to you. Speaking to you. Speaking to you. We're being warned. All right? We can see certain things about the future because humanity moves along trend lines. It's not like the trends change. It's like fashion changes every season. These trend lines don't change much. People keep doing the things they always do, and it kind of shifts depending on the circumstances around them. So the trend lines are telling you where people tend to go and how that's going to fit into a changing world, which in some degrees is predictable. The world would be hotter, there'll be less water, there'll be a lot of crop failure, and there'll be a lot of political instability, and in certain places conflict. I mean, the first ones are absolute. So you need to think about these things. You have intelligence. That's why you have intelligence. Intelligence is just about being clever and being, it's about seeing, knowing, and taking action. The animals do it. The great tsunami in Indonesia, the elephants and the animals head for the hills, and people didn't respond to the coming tsunami, except maybe a few. This is the coming tsunami. It's coming. Doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. Doesn't matter what religion you're in. Doesn't matter your point of view. It's coming. It is coming. Certain things are coming. And how it happens when, you can't tell for sure. This is not about naming the date and the time and the place. It is about the movement of the world. And you're in it. And you have the resources at this deeper knowledge to be able to respond to that clearly, objectively, and to take steps to prepare yourself. It might take many steps. Perhaps you can't even see a way to prepare for, but at least you take steps. So we're talking about a journey now. We're not talking about just having an answer or being at the end of the journey. It's about taking a journey. If you don't take this journey, then your prospects may not look very good going forward. So this is really important.
Yeah, Marshall, the title of tonight's presentation that you gave was Why the World Needs You, and I'm flashing back to one of your works from 1989, over 33 years ago. Step 101 of Steps to Knowledge, the world needs me, but I will wait.
Yeah.
Why wait?
Well, you wait because you have to prepare. I mean, there's a gift you have for the world. It's very specific. It involves certain people. Probably you have never met them yet. Maybe you have, some of them. But you have to take a journey to get there. It's maybe not have anything to do with what you're doing now. It probably doesn't represent the thing you always thought you would be doing. But it's there. And it's there because it's needed in the world, and you're one of the people who can respond to that specific need. You're not going to solve the whole thing. Of course not. Nobody's going to solve the whole thing. No president, no leader. No. It's going to take a lot of people, increasingly, responding to changing circumstances and being constructive in their response. And this is what's being called for now. I'm giving this teaching because the world is changing, and if people don't respond to that, this gets pretty hazardous and dangerous for everybody. So everybody has a stake in this. But the difference is, when you connect with this deeper intelligence, it is really about service in the world. It's not about you gathering wealth and hiding out somewhere. It's not about you becoming all totally powerful that nobody can hurt you. It's about your service, why you have been sent. You've been sent to the world. You didn't just show up one day like, what am I doing here? You were sent. But this is at a deeper level within you. Your personality, your worldly conditioning may not say anything about this. Maybe you admire people who have a greater purpose and destiny in the world, but that's going to have to be a lot of people now. Otherwise, the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few, in terms of the world needs many people and few show up. Watching this terrible earthquake in Turkey and Syria, I mean, look at the people showing up from all over the world. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. And so we've all got something to show up for. Maybe we can't see it today. I couldn't see 20 years ago what I'm doing today. I was on my way to it, that's for sure. So you take a journey, and the journey is of many steps. You come to knowledge because there are steps you take to knowledge, where you learn what it is, how it's been in your experience, the evidence of it in your experience from the past. You've experienced this before. You have had experiences of premonition, deep insight, caution, direction. Maybe infrequently, but the evidence is there, but you have to search for it in your own experience. As opposed to make someone love you, it's there to guide your life so that you may fulfill your destiny in the world. It can't be threatened, it can't be changed. It's not afraid of the world. It's, in fact, your being here at this time is absolutely perfect. It doesn't look very good. In fact, it's getting to look worse every day. But you're here for a reason. And when you begin to consider that, tap into that, then you change your position with yourself and the world.
Yes, thanks. You know, as you mentioned the earthquake and the amazing response, I think we all, not all, but many can respond to an emergency or an overt catastrophe. Right. The problem is, what if the thing to respond to is not so overt, is not so obviously catastrophic, but something much bigger? What if it's a warning in the heart? And this is where humanity, I think, is fall short of responding.
Well, that's right, Reed, because we don't prepare for things that are inevitable, even if we know they're inevitable. You know, we just don't prepare. We may have experts that tell us to prepare, and they do. But we're so given to what we're doing. It's the investment, it's the psychology of previous investment, this idea that we've given ourselves so much to what we're doing that we can't really think about doing anything else, and we're not really that willing to change. But you know, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark, right? So you get ready ahead of time for eventualities. You make plans ahead of time. You respond to the future. This is the future talking to you. Not just the moment. If it's in the moment, it's too late. If you respond to crisis in the moment, it's too late. It's too late. So what you're being given here is a means of surviving in a radically changing world and being of great service in that world, which is your heart's desire. You can't just be a locust upon the land and just devour everything in sight. I mean, you're going to run out of everything in the land, which is happening slowly but surely. The big changes are happening slowly but surely, so they don't arouse a lot of response. But they are the most important changes. And we know about some of them, and it takes a lot of heart to look into them because they're real. But they're real. No matter what you think, they're real. And you kind of have to be real to respond to them. You can't just be ideological. You can't just hide behind your religion. You can't just hide behind your political views. It's like, wow, this is real. How am I going to respond to this? And how might it affect my life and the people around me? So we're being prepared for a radically changing world, a new world reality. We're also being prepared for this foreign presence in our lives, an intervention, which means it came here on its own for its own purposes and not our beckoning. So in the weeks to come, I'm going to be talking about all these things that I've mentioned tonight in greater depth and detail. But tonight I'm creating a context, a bigger context for your life, because your life is happening in a bigger world, and that bigger world will affect everything that you and I are able to do as we go forward.
Marshall, before we start to close up, I just want to go back to one thing you said. You said we're all spiritual beings. Uh-huh. And you also talked about an ancient memory or an experience of an inner kind of awakening. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing that right now, that's happening for them. And yet the world is as noisy and as divisive and as dissonant as ever. And so how can someone who is experiencing that stirring of spirit or that ancient memory keep that alive for themselves and move with it in a world like this?
That's really important, yeah. Well, the world is getting noisier and will get noisier. So you're going to have to withdraw into yourself and begin to preserve and build your inner life, because your inner life is something the world cannot really reach. It can reach you psychologically, it can reach you physically, it can reach you emotionally, but your inner life is something deeper and more sacred within you. And if you have too much of the world impressing itself upon you, you just will not be able to build this center within yourself, being grounded in this deeper part of you. And perhaps you've experienced intuition, and most people have to some degree. Well, that's coming out of this deeper part of you. But the deeper part of you is much bigger than that. But taking the steps to knowledge, which is something that I'm very much involved in, and that I want people to be involved in, is a process of regaining your fundamental core connection with the deeper intelligence within you, which holds the real purpose and direction of your life. You could pray to God for purpose and direction. Show me my purpose and direction, but it's already been put within you, waiting to be discovered. But it's not an idea. It's not like, oh, I had an inspiration or I had an idea. It's something you have to move towards. It is a different experience. It is unique. It is not conditioned by your fears and your preferences and your obsessions. You kind of have to make a way for it, right? Clear the jungle out so you can see a pathway. And that pathway will open before you as you begin to take this journey. And it's pretty amazing, even at the outset, how people are able to recall what they've known from the past and to see how it's connected to their overall experience, which is something maybe they've never seen before.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Marshall. I think this is really helpful to those people who are having this experience. Wonderful you could join us. We're going to be doing this again. We'll be back March 10th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for the next live conversation on this topic of why the world needs you and the bigger picture of your life. So thank you, Marshall.
Great.
Appreciate.
Great to be with you. Great to be with you all.
Yeah. And thank you all for watching. For those who would like to learn more about Marshall, we have a slide up here. You can visit his website, marshallsummers.com, find him on Twitter, Facebook, and here on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all for being here. Feel free to write in if something has struck you tonight, and we'll take that input and be sure to talk about that next time. So with that, I'll say good night. Take care.